The transport pod hummed softly as it descended toward Haven 7. Ji-won pressed her face against the window, watching the blue and green planet grow larger. Her anti-grav wheelchair was locked beside her seat, waiting. Her sister Bo-ram sat across from her, arms crossed, worry written all over her face. "You don't have to do this," Bo-ram said for the 100th time. "There are safer places to volunteer." Ji-won smiled. "I want to help where help is needed most. These aren't puppies at an animal shelter, Ji-won. These are dangerous aliens. Some of them fought in the wars." Bo-ram leaned forward. "Please, just think about this." "I have thought about it." Ji-won touched her sister's hand. "For 2 years I felt useless, stuck, unable to do anything that mattered. This matters." Bo-ram's eyes filled with tears, but she said nothing more. The pod landed at the Galactic Displaced Beings Shelter just after noon. The building was enormous, stretching across several miles of cleared land. Tall walls surrounded it. Guard towers stood at each corner. Ji-won transferred to her wheelchair, and the anti-grav technology lifted her smoothly off the ground. She floated forward, the chair responding to her thoughts through a neural link. A small alien met them at the entrance. He had purple skin, forearms, and large, worried eyes. His name badge read Quip Director. "Welcome, welcome," Quip said, his voice high and nervous. "We're so grateful for volunteers. But I must ask, are you certain about this? We have many residents who are challenging." "I'm certain," Ji-won said firmly. Bo-ram stayed close as Quip led them through the facility. The outer sections were calm. Small aliens sat in common rooms, some watching entertainment screens, others talking quietly. Children played in a courtyard. It all seemed peaceful enough. Then they reached the high-security wing. The walls here were thicker. Armed guards stood at every checkpoint. Energy barriers hummed with power. The air felt different, heavier. Ji-won could feel her sister's hand grip her shoulder. "Perhaps we should return another day," Quip suggested. "These residents are not ready for civilian interaction." "I'd like to see them," Ji-won said. "All beings deserve to be seen." Quip's skin turned a darker shade of purple, but he nodded. They passed several cells. Inside each one, Ji-won saw creatures that would have terrified most people. A being made of living crystal that pulsed with angry red light. Something with too many teeth and not enough eyes. A creature that existed partially out of phase with reality. Then they reached the last cell. The nameplate read, Wraith, Draken, Extreme Threat Level. Through the triple-layered energy barriers, Ji-won saw him. He was massive. At least 9 feet tall, covered in scales as black as space itself. His body was heavily muscled, built for war. Scars crossed his chest and arms. His wings were folded against his back, one of them bent at an odd angle. His eyes were golden with vertical pupils like a cat's eyes, but much more intelligent. When those eyes fixed on Ji-won, every guard in the corridor tensed. Rith moved toward the barrier with slow, deliberate steps. Each footfall shook the floor slightly. His claws clicked against the metal. He was terrifying. He was beautiful. He was suffering. Ji-won could see it in the way he held his damaged wing, in the careful way he moved, in the deep sadness behind the anger in his eyes. "They call him the Devourer," Quip whispered. "He killed hundreds during the Convergence Wars. We keep him here because no prison will take him. Too dangerous to move. Has he hurt anyone here?" Ji-won asked. Quip hesitated. "Well, no, but he could, at any moment." Reith pressed closer to the barrier, studying Ji-won. His nostrils flared. He tilted his head, confused perhaps by what he saw. A small human in a floating chair, unable to run, unable to flee, yet not showing fear. "Leave," Reith said. His voice was deep, like thunder rolling across mountains. "You don't belong here. Neither do you," Ji-won replied calmly. The guards gasped. Bo-ram grabbed Ji-won's arm, but Ji-won kept her eyes on Rith. Something flickered across the dragon's face. Surprise, maybe. He bared his teeth, and they were each as long as Ji-won's fingers. Sharp. Deadly. "I am a monster," Rith growled. "I have done monstrous things. Your fear would be wisdom." "I'm not afraid," Ji-won said. It wasn't entirely true. Her heart was pounding. But she refused to look away. "I see someone who is in pain, your wing." "It wasn't healed properly." Rith's eyes widened. He pulled back slightly, his damaged wing twitching involuntarily. "How did you—" He stopped himself, then snarled. "It doesn't matter. Go away, little human. There is nothing for you here. My name is Jiwon, she said, and I'll come back tomorrow. If you want to talk, I'll listen. If you don't, I'll just sit here. Either way, you won't be alone. She turned her wheelchair around. Boram hurried beside her and Quip scrambled ahead, clearly eager to leave. As they walked away, Jiwon heard something behind them. A sound she couldn't quite identify. It might have been a laugh, or it might have been a sob. That night, Boram tried again to convince Jiwon to choose a different volunteer assignment. They sat in their small apartment eating rice and vegetables for dinner. You have a good heart, Boram said, but this is dangerous. That creature, his name is Wraith. That creature, Boram repeated firmly, is a trained killer. The guards told me he destroyed 3 warships by himself. He can breathe fire. He's stronger than 10 humans. And you want to sit outside his cell and chat? Yes, Jiwon said simply. Why? Boram's voice cracked. Why him? Why not help the children in the outer wing, or the injured ones who actually want help? Jiwon set down her chopsticks. 2 years ago, after the accident, do you remember what it was like? Boram's face softened. Of course. Everyone looked at me differently. Like I was broken, like I was less than I was before. Even the nice people treated me like I was fragile. Something to be pitied. Jiwon met her sister's eyes. But you didn't. You got angry at anyone who talked down to me. You fought the doctors who said I'd never have a normal life. You saw me, not just my wheelchair. That's different, is it? Jiwon asked. Everyone sees Rith as a monster. Just a dangerous thing to be locked away. But I saw something else today. I saw someone who is suffering. Someone who has lost everything. Someone who expects nothing but fear and hate from everyone he meets. She smiled sadly. That's a loneliness I understand. Boram was quiet for a long moment. Finally, she sighed. You're the bravest person I know. And the most stubborn. I learned from the best, Jiwon said, grinning. I'm coming with you tomorrow, Boram declared. If you're going to do this foolish thing, you won't do it alone. That night, Jiwon couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about those golden eyes, about the pain she'd seen behind the anger, about a broken wing that had never healed right, about a being that everyone called a monster, locked away in a cell with nothing but his memories and his scars. She thought about cages. Some were made of metal and energy barriers. Others were made of broken spines and neural links to anti-grav chairs. But maybe, just maybe, some cages could be opened, not with keys or technology, but with something simpler, with someone willing to see past the bars. Tomorrow couldn't come fast enough. Jiwon returned the next day, just as she'd promised. Boram came with her, along with a young man named Tae-yang who worked as a medic at the shelter. He had kind eyes and carried a medical bag everywhere he went. You're the one who wants to help the Draken? Tae-yang asked as they walked through the security checkpoints. I want to try, Jiwon said. I've read his file, Tae-yang said quietly. It's bad. Really bad. But I've also watched him through the security cameras. He had a chance to hurt a guard last month when there was a power glitch. The barriers went down for almost 10 seconds. He just stood there. Didn't move. Why didn't anyone mention that? Boram asked. Tae-yang shrugged. Doesn't fit the monster story, I guess. It's easier to keep him locked up if everyone believes he's pure evil. They reached Rith's cell. The massive dragon was sitting in the far corner, his back against the wall. His eyes were closed, but Jiwon could tell he wasn't sleeping. His ears twitched when they approached. Slowly, he opened his eyes. You came back, Rith said. He sounded surprised. I said I would, Jiwon replied. She positioned her wheelchair near the barrier, but not too close. Boram and Tae-yang stood behind her. This is my sister Boram, and this is Tae-yang. He's a medic. Rith's eyes narrowed. I don't need a medic. Your wing does, Tae-yang said gently. May I scan it? It won't hurt. Just light. No, Rith growled. But his damaged wing shifted, and Jiwon saw him wince. It hurts all the time, doesn't it? She asked. Rith was silent for a long moment. Then quietly, yes. They sat in silence for a while. Jiwon didn't push. She'd learned that sometimes the most important thing was just being present. After 10 minutes, Rith spoke again. Why are you here, Jiwon? What do you want from me? Nothing, she said. I don't want anything. I just thought you might want company. I'm not good company, Rith said. I don't know how to talk to people anymore. Only how to fight them. Then we'll figure it out together, Jiwon said. Tell me about your home. Before the war. Rith's expression changed. The hardness in his eyes softened just a little. My home was called Drakkar 7. It had 3 moons. The sky was always purple at sunset. He paused, remembering. My family lived in the mountain caves. That's traditional for Draken. We value honor above all things, protecting those weaker than ourselves, keeping our word no matter the cost. It sounds beautiful, Ji-won said. It was, Ryth said. His voice grew harder. Until the Convergence Wars came. Until everything burned. He turned away from them, facing the wall. Ji-won could see his shoulders shaking slightly. She wanted to comfort him, but the barrier stood between them. All she could do was stay. My family is dead, Rith said finally. My people are scattered across the galaxy. I fought to save them. I became the monster they needed me to be. And in the end, it wasn't enough. He looked back at Ji-won. I killed many beings. I destroyed ships. I did terrible things. They call me the Devourer because I showed no mercy on the battlefield. And now, Ji-won asked softly, now I'm here in a cage, where monsters belong. You're not a monster, Ji-won said. Rith laughed bitterly. You don't know what I've done. You're right. I don't know everything, but I know what I see. I see someone who is hurting. Someone who lost everything fighting for what they believed in. Someone who could have escaped last month but didn't. She leaned forward. Monsters don't choose to stay in cages, Rith. He stared at her, those golden eyes searching her face for something. Truth, maybe. Or hope. Over the next few weeks, Ji-won came every day. Sometimes Boram joined her. Sometimes Tai Yang. Other times she came alone. Slowly, Rith began to open up. He told her about Draken culture. How they believed that every being had a fire inside them. A purpose that burned bright. How they sang songs of their ancestors before battle. How they mourned their dead by releasing light lanterns into the sky. One for each fallen warrior. Ji-won shared her own stories. The accident that had paralyzed her. The transport crash that killed 3 people. How she'd woken up in a hospital, unable to feel her legs, unable to move. How she'd wanted to give up so many times. But you didn't, Rith said one day. Give up, I mean. No, Ji-won said. My sister wouldn't let me. She fought for me when I couldn't fight for myself. She reminded me that I was more than my body, more than what I'd lost. You're lucky to have her, Rith said quietly. I am, Ji-won agreed. Who fought for you? Rith was silent. One afternoon, Tai Yang brought his medical scanner. Rith had finally agreed to let him examine the wing. The scan results made Tai Yang frown. It's worse than I thought, he said, showing Ji-won the data on his tablet. The bones healed incorrectly. There's nerve damage. Scar tissue everywhere. He'll never fly again without surgery. Can you do the surgery? Ji-won asked. Tai Yang shook his head. Not here. And definitely not for him. The regulations are clear. Dangerous detainees only receive emergency medical care. Nothing elective. But he's in constant pain. I know, Tai Yang said sadly. But my hands are tied. I'm sorry. Ji-won felt anger rising in her chest. It wasn't fair. Rith had been left to suffer because everyone had decided he was beyond saving. Beyond helping. Just a thing to be contained. She went to Quip, the director. She argued passionately for an hour. She brought up the Galactic treaties about humane treatment. She pointed out that Rith had never harmed anyone at the shelter. She even offered to help raise funds for the surgery herself. Quip listened politely. Then he showed her Rith's file. Page after page of war crimes, destruction, death. Official orders from 3 different galactic councils that Rith was never to be released under any circumstances. I'm sorry, Quip said, but I have my orders. The Draken stays where he is. Ji-won returned to Rith's cell, defeated. When he saw her face, he knew immediately what had happened. It's all right, Rith said gently. I didn't expect anything different. It's not all right, Ji-won said, her voice shaking. You deserve better. You deserve help. I deserve to be here, Rith interrupted. For what I've done. But Ji-won, he moved closer to the barrier. What you've done for me these past weeks, just by coming here, by talking to me like I'm a person, that's more than I deserve, more than I hoped for. I'll keep fighting, Ji-won promised. I won't give up, Rith smiled then. It was a small smile and his teeth were still terrifying, but it was real. You remind me of my sister. She was stubborn too. Brave. She died protecting others during the war. She would have liked you. That night, as Ji-won was preparing to leave, one of the guards pulled her aside. His name was Voss, a large alien with gray skin and multiple eyes. "You should know something," Voss said quietly. "About the Draken, what?" Ji-won asked. "There are other dangerous prisoners here, in the other cells. Some of them. They hurt the weaker residents when they get the chance, during recreation time in the common areas. Small attacks. Nothing we can prove." Voss looked uncomfortable, but whenever it happens near Rith's cell, it stops. The aggressive ones back off. "We thought maybe it was coincidence, but what?" Ji-won pressed. One of the guards reviewed old security footage. Rith positions himself at his barrier, where the smaller aliens can see him. He doesn't do anything. Doesn't threaten. Just stands there. Makes himself visible, and the bullies leave. Voss shook his head. He's been protecting them, even from inside his cage. Ji-won felt something warm spread through her chest. Not surprise exactly, but confirmation of what she'd already suspected. Rith wasn't a monster. He never had been. He was a protector who'd lost everyone he was supposed to protect. A warrior with no war to fight. A being with so much strength and no way to use it for good. Until now. As she left the shelter that evening, Ji-won made a decision. She didn't know how yet, but she would find a way to help Rith. Not just his wing, but his spirit. His purpose. His fire that had burned so bright and now flickered in the darkness of a cell. Everyone deserved a second chance. Even dragons. The shelter had been getting more crowded. Every day, new refugees arrived from conflict zones across the galaxy. The common areas were packed. Tempers ran hot. The guards looked tired and stressed. Ji-won noticed the tension growing. Even the normally calm aliens seemed on edge. Taeyang warned her to be careful, but she continued her visits. Rith needed her, and truthfully, she needed him too. Their conversations had become the best part of her day. On this particular afternoon, Ji-won was in one of the medium security common rooms. She'd been talking with a group of young aliens, helping them practice their human language skills. Boram had stayed home with a headache, and Taeyang was in the medical wing. Ji-won was alone, surrounded by dozens of beings of different species. That's when the lights flickered. Once. Twice. Then the alarm started blaring. People started shouting in different languages. Ji-won's translator earpiece struggled to keep up. The young aliens she'd been teaching scattered, running for the exits. Guards rushed past her, heading toward the high-security wing. Then Ji-won heard it, the sound of energy barriers failing. The electronic hum died, replaced by the crash of cell doors opening. A massive alien burst into the common room. He had grayscales, multiple arms, and eyes that burned with rage. Other dangerous prisoners followed him. Ji-won recognized him from his file photos. His name was Vekar. He was a Krill warrior, convicted of war crimes even worse than Rith's. "Freedom!" Vekar roared. His followers echoed the cry. Guards tried to form a defensive line, but there were too many escaping prisoners. Energy weapons fired. The smell of burned ozone filled the air. Civilians screamed and ran. In the chaos, Ji-won's wheelchair was knocked sideways by a fleeing alien. She tumbled to the ground, her neural link breaking. The anti-grav chair skittered away across the floor, useless. Ji-won tried to crawl toward cover, but her legs wouldn't work. They never worked. She could only use her arms to drag herself slowly across the floor. Too slowly, Vekar spotted her. "A human," he snarled, moving toward her. "Perfect. They'll negotiate for one of their own." 2 other prisoners flanked him. They had cruel smiles. Ji-won's heart hammered in her chest. She tried to pull herself faster, but where could she go? She couldn't run, couldn't hide, couldn't fight. Vekar reached down toward her with one clawed hand. Then the wall exploded. Not the wall to the outside, the wall to the high-security wing. Reinforced metal and concrete shattered like glass. Through the dust and debris, a massive shadow moved. Rith. He was terrifying in his fury. His wings spread wide, the damaged one trembling, but held high. His scales seemed darker, absorbing the light around him. His golden eyes blazed. Smoke curled from his nostrils. Every guard in the room turned their weapons toward him. Every prisoner froze. Even Vekar stepped back. The Devourer. Someone whispered. Rith's eyes found Jiwan on the floor. Something in his expression changed. The rage focused into something sharper, more dangerous. He moved with speed that shouldn't have been possible for something so large, closing the distance between himself and Jiwan in 3 enormous strides. Vekar raised his weapons. Stay back, dragon. Rith didn't stay back. He put himself directly between Jiwan and the Krill warrior. His tail swept around, forming a protective barrier. His wings spread wider, creating a living shield. Touch her, Rith said, his voice so deep it shook the floor. And I will remind you all why they call me the Devourer. There's one of you and dozens of us, Vekar snarled. But he didn't move forward. Then dozens of you will die, Rith replied calmly. Who wants to be first? For a long moment nobody moved. The tension was so thick Jiwan could barely breathe. She was lying on the cold floor directly behind Rith's legs, his massive body blocking her from everyone else. Then Vekar made his choice. He roared and charged. What happened next would later be described in reports as controlled devastation. Rith moved like a fighter who'd spent decades perfecting his art. His tail whipped out, striking one attacker in the chest and sending him flying backward. His claws raked across another's weapon, destroying it. When 3 prisoners tried to crush him from different sides, he spun, his wings creating a windstorm that knocked them all down, but he didn't kill anyone. Jiwan watched in amazement. Every strike was measured, every blow carefully controlled. Rith was strong enough to tear these beings apart, but he wasn't doing that. He was stopping them, containing them, protecting, not just Jiwan, but also the other civilians still trapped in the room. When Vekar got too close, Rith's jaws snapped inches from his face. The Krill warrior stumbled backward, terror replacing his earlier confidence. I could end you, Rith growled. But I won't. Not today. Not here. Not in front of her. The guards had been too shocked to act at first. Now they moved in, taking advantage of Rith's control over the situation. They stunned the escaping prisoners one by one. Energy nets flew through the air. Containment fields activated. Within minutes, it was over. But the guards' weapons were still pointed at Rith. Step away from the human, the head guard commanded. Slowly. Rith didn't move. He looked down at Jiwan and she saw fear in his eyes. Not fear for himself, fear for her. Are you hurt? He asked quietly. Jiwan shook her head. Her voice came out shaky. No, I'm okay, thank you for... I'm glad you're safe, Rith interrupted. He looked at the guards. I'm going to pick her up now. Don't shoot. Please, she needs help. The head guard hesitated, then nodded slowly. Rith moved with impossible gentleness. One enormous claw slid under Jiwan's back. Another supported her legs. He lifted her as if she weighed nothing, cradling her against his chest. She could hear his heart beating. Fast, strong, alive. Your wheelchair is there, Rith said, nodding toward where it had fallen, but I don't know how to make it work. It's okay, Jiwan said. You can carry me. Taeyang burst into the room, medical bag in hand. When he saw Rith holding Jiwan, he stopped short. It's all right, Jiwan called out. He saved me. Taeyang approached carefully. Rith gently transferred Jiwan to a medical stretcher Taeyang had brought. As soon as she was secure, the guards surrounded Rith. Energy weapons charged. Containment fields activated. Wait, Jiwan shouted. You can't. He didn't do anything wrong. He broke out of containment, the head guard said. Protocol says you protect civilians, Jiwan interrupted, her voice strong despite her fear. That's what he did. He protected me. He protected everyone here. More guards arrived. Director Quip rushed in, his purple skin almost white with shock. He looked at the destroyed wall, the unconscious prisoners, the unharmed civilians, and Rith standing calmly in the center of it all. What happened here? Quip demanded. I'll tell you what happened, said a voice from the doorway. Everyone turned. A woman stood there with a recording device in her hand. She had sharp eyes and an official press badge. Her name was He Jin, and she was a reporter who'd been investigating shelter conditions. I got everything, Heejin said, holding up her device. The breakout, the attack, and this Draken saving that girl's life. She smiled. This is going to be quite a story. Rith was taken back to his cell, but this time he wasn't alone. Guards surrounded him, weapons ready. Medical staff checked him for injuries. He had dozens of new cuts and bruises. His damaged wing was bleeding. But he'd said nothing, asked for nothing, until Ji-won was confirmed safe. As they sealed him back in his cell, Rith looked at Ji-won one last time. I'm sorry, he said, for frightening you. You didn't frighten me, Ji-won replied. You saved me. I would do it again, Rith said simply. Every time, no matter the cost. The guards activated the barriers. The energy fields hummed back to life, stronger than before. They added extra layers, extra security, as if Rith was more dangerous now than he'd been before. But Ji-won knew the truth. Rith wasn't dangerous. He was dangerous to those who threatened the innocent. There was a difference, a huge difference. That night, Heejin's story went live across the galactic network. The footage showed everything. Vakar attacking, Rith breaking through the wall, the careful way he'd fought, the gentle way he'd held Ji-won, the fact that he'd had every chance to escape, but chose to protect instead. Within hours, it had been viewed millions of times. Within a day, the hashtag #FreeTheDraken was trending across multiple worlds. Ji-won sat in her apartment watching the story spread. Bo-ram sat beside her, holding her hand. You were right about him, Bo-ram said quietly. I'm sorry I doubted you. You were just trying to protect me, Ji-won said, like he did. What happens now? Bo-ram asked. Ji-won looked at the screen, where Rith's image was frozen mid-flight, wings spread, protecting her with his own body. She smiled. Now, she said, we fight for him the way he fought for me, with everything we have. Outside the shelter, crowds were beginning to gather. Some held signs, others lit candles. The galaxy was watching. And for the first time in years, Rith wasn't alone in his cell. He had hope. He had a friend. He had a chance. The video changed everything. Within a week, it had been viewed over 1 billion times across the galaxy. People from hundreds of worlds watched Rith break through a wall not to escape but to protect. They saw him fight with precision and restraint. They saw him gently cradle a paralyzed human girl who couldn't run, couldn't flee, couldn't defend herself. The comment sections exploded. Debates raged on news networks. Some people argued that one good deed didn't erase war crimes. Others said that keeping a being in constant pain without medical treatment was itself a crime. Religious leaders from 12 faiths weighed in about redemption and second chances. But mostly, people just kept watching that moment when Rith picked up Ji-won. The way his massive claws were so careful. The way he asked if she was hurt. The way he told the guards not to shoot, not for his own safety, but because Ji-won needed help. Please, he'd said in that video. Just that one word. Please. It was the please that broke people's hearts. Ji-won received thousands of messages. Most were supportive. Some were threats telling her she was a traitor to her species for defending an alien. She deleted those without reading them fully. She had more important things to do. Bo-ram had quit her job to help. Together they organized a campaign. They created a website called Second Chances that detailed Rith's case. They reached out to lawyers who specialized in galactic law. They contacted advocates for prisoner rights across multiple worlds. The response was overwhelming. A lawyer from Earth named Ms. Park agreed to take Rith's case for free. I've been practicing for 30 years, she told Ji-won over a video call. I've never seen a clearer example of rehabilitation potential. Let's bring this to the Galactic Refugee Council. Tae Yang gathered medical documentation. He compiled reports about Rith's untreated injuries. He got statements from other medical staff who'd been too afraid to speak up before. He showed that denying Rith treatment wasn't security. It was cruelty. Heejin continued investigating. She found records that Quip had tried to bury. Security footage showing Rith breaking up fights between other prisoners without hurting anyone. Reports from guards who'd witnessed him protecting weaker residents. Evidence that he'd refused multiple chances to escape over the past year. He's been a model prisoner, Hyejin told her editor. More than that. He's been a guardian. And they've kept him in a cage in pain, because everyone was too afraid to look past his record. The shelter director, Quip, tried to do damage control. He gave interviews saying that procedures had been followed, that Ryth was still dangerous, that the public didn't understand the full situation. But then the other prisoners started talking. A small alien named Pip, who looked like a bundle of fur with big eyes, gave a tearful interview. The Draken saved my life 3 times. Bigger prisoners wanted to hurt me, take my food, beat me, but when the Draken was near, they left me alone. He never said anything to me, never asked for anything, but he kept me safe. More testimonies came forward. Dozens of beings all saying the same thing. Ryth had protected them, watched over them, kept the violent prisoners in check just by his presence. One elderly alien, a grandmother type with tentacles instead of arms, said something that went viral. We were all afraid of the dragon, but the dragon was never afraid for himself. He was only afraid for us. 3 weeks after the incident, the Galactic Refugee Council agreed to hold a hearing. It would be broadcast across the galaxy. Ryth's fate would be decided in front of billions of watching eyes. Ji-won was terrified. The night before the hearing, she visited Ryth. He looked tired. The new wounds from the fight had healed, but his damaged wing still hung at that wrong angle. He tried to smile when he saw her, but it didn't reach his eyes. Tomorrow, he said. Big day. Are you scared? Ji-won asked. Ryth considered the question. No. The worst thing that can happen is I stay here. That's not new. I've made peace with it. He moved closer to the barrier. But Ji-won, I'm scared for you. For me? Why? Because you fought so hard for this. If they say no, if they decide I'm beyond redemption, it will hurt you, and I don't want you to hurt because of me. His golden eyes were full of concern. You've given me something I thought I'd lost forever. You've given me hope. Even if tomorrow doesn't go the way we want, that won't change. You've already saved me in the ways that matter. Ji-won felt tears on her cheeks. You saved me too. You know that, right? For 2 years I felt useless, like I couldn't make a difference because I couldn't walk. But you showed me that strength isn't about what your body can do. It's about who you choose to be. Then we saved each other, Ryth said softly. The hearing took place in a massive chamber. The council consisted of representatives from 20 different species. They sat in a semicircle raised above the floor. Ryth stood in the center, still in restraints. Guards surrounded him. Energy barriers hummed on all sides. Ji-won sat in the audience section with Boram, Taeyang, and dozens of supporters. They wore blue ribbons, a symbol their movement had adopted. Across the chamber, other groups wore red, opposing Ryth's release. The head counselor, a being made of crystalline structures that refracted light, called the session to order. We are here to review the case of the Draken known as Ryth, designated prisoner 847B, called by some the Devourer. The counselor's voice echoed through the chamber. The question before us: does this being qualify for reclassification and possible release? The prosecution went first. They showed footage from the wars. Ships destroyed, casualties in the thousands. They read testimonies from survivors who'd lost family members to Ryth's attacks. It was brutal, painful, true. Ji-won watched Ryth's face. He didn't look away. He didn't make excuses. He stood there and faced everything he'd done, all the pain he'd caused. She saw tears on his scaled cheeks. Then it was their turn. Ms. Park presented the medical evidence first. She showed the council 3D scans of Ryth's injuries. She explained how he'd been left in constant pain for over a year. This isn't justice, she argued. This is torture. No being, regardless of their crimes, deserves this treatment. Taeyang testified about Ryth's behavior in the shelter. In 18 months, he never once hurt another being. He had opportunities. He had motivation. But he chose restraint. That's not the behavior of a monster. That's the behavior of someone who has changed. Hyejin presented her investigation. The footage of Ryth protecting other prisoners. The testimonies from dozens of beings he'd kept safe. The question isn't whether he committed crimes, she told the council. He did, he admits it. The question is whether he's still that same being, or if he's become someone different. Then Ji-won was called to testify. She floated to the center of the chamber in her anti-grav wheelchair. The weight of 1 billion watching eyes pressed down on her. But when she looked at Ryth, he nodded encouragement. I'm nobody special, Ji-won began. I'm just a human girl who can't walk. I went to that shelter because I wanted to help. I met Reth and everyone told me to be afraid, that he was a monster, that he was dangerous." She paused. They were half right. He is dangerous. To those who hurt the weak, to those who prey on the helpless, to those who have power and use it to cause pain. She looked directly at the council. But to me? To the other prisoners he protected? To the civilians he saved during the breakout? He wasn't dangerous. He was a guardian. And yes, he did terrible things in the war. But we all know that war makes us do terrible things. The question shouldn't be what did he do? It should be who is he now? Her voice grew stronger. I know who he is. He's someone who breaks through walls to protect others, who fights without killing when he could easily kill, who suffers in silence rather than demand help, who asks please when guards point weapons at him, not because he fears them but because someone needs medical attention. She looked at Rith again. He's my friend. He's a protector. He deserves a chance to prove that he's more than his worst day. The chamber was silent when she finished. The council deliberated for 3 hours. Ji-won sat with Bo-ram, holding her sister's hand so tight it hurt. Tae-yang paced. Supporters whispered prayers in various languages. Finally, the crystalline counselor spoke. This council has reviewed all evidence. We acknowledge the severity of Rith's war crimes. We acknowledge the pain caused to countless beings. These facts cannot be erased, the counselor paused. However, we also acknowledge evidence of genuine change, rehabilitation, a consistent pattern of protective behavior, and the violation of basic rights through denial of medical treatment. Ji-won held her breath. Therefore, this council grants provisional release to the Draken known as Rith, under the following conditions. He will be placed under the guardianship of Ji-won Lee for a period of 1 year. He will receive necessary medical treatment. He will wear a monitoring device at all times. Any violation of galactic law will result in immediate re-imprisonment. Any act of violence will result in permanent incarceration. The chamber erupted. Some people cheered. Others shouted in anger. Security guards moved to maintain order. Ji-won couldn't hear any of it. She was looking at Rith. The massive dragon had dropped to his knees. His shoulders shook. He pressed his claws against his face, and Ji-won realized he was crying. Not tears of sadness, tears of relief, of gratitude, of hope. Bo-ram hugged Ji-won tight. 6 months had passed since Rith's release. The world had changed in ways Ji-won never imagined possible. It started small. A message from a veteran who'd lost his legs in the same wars where Rith had fought. He'd written, "If a dragon can find redemption, maybe there's hope for me too." Then another message from a young alien who'd been bullied her whole life for being different. "You showed me that being different can be beautiful." Hundreds of messages became thousands. People from across the galaxy reaching out, sharing their stories of disability, of loss, of feeling broken or useless or alone. And they all asked the same question. How did you do it? How did you find each other? Ji-won sat in the small house she now shared with Bo-ram and Rith, reading message after message. Rith lay nearby, his wing fully healed now, occasionally stretching them just because he could. He still wore the monitoring device on his leg, a silver band that tracked his location at all times. He didn't mind it. "It's a small price for freedom," he always said. "We should do something," Ji-won said suddenly. Rith lifted his head. "Do something?" "About all these messages, all these people who need help, who need what we found." Ji-won's eyes were bright with excitement. "What if we could bring them together, disabled humans and displaced aliens? People who society says are broken, pairing them up to help each other, like we help each other," Rith said slowly, understanding dawning. "Exactly like we help each other." Bo-ram came home from work that evening to find them surrounded by papers and holographic displays. Ji-won was sketching ideas. Rith was using his claws to carefully type on an oversized keyboard they'd built for him. "What's all this?" Bo-ram asked. "It's a program," Ji-won said. "We're calling it Wings of Haven. We match disabled humans with displaced aliens. They help each other, live together, support each other, like a family." Bo-ram stared at them. Then slowly, she smiled. "You're going to need help. Funding. legal support, medical staff. She set down her bag. You're also going to need a director who knows how to manage programs. Someone organized and stubborn. Are you volunteering? Ji-won asked, grinning. Someone has to keep you two out of trouble, Bo-ram said, pulling up a chair. They worked for 3 months to get everything ready. Tai-yang signed on immediately as the medical director. I've been wanting to do something like this for years, he said. I just didn't know how. Hee-jin helped with publicity, spreading the word across the galaxy. Ms. Park handled the legal details, navigating the complex laws about cross-species guardianship and living arrangements. The shelter director, Quip, was surprisingly supportive. I was wrong about Rith, he admitted to Ji-won one day. I was so focused on what he'd been that I couldn't see what he'd become. This program, it's important. Use the shelter facilities. We'll make room. The first official pairing was between a young human man named Jin Ho who'd lost his sight in an accident, and a small alien named Whisper who'd lost her home world. Whisper had the ability to sense electrical fields, which meant she could describe the world to Jin Ho in ways he'd never experienced before. In return, Jin Ho taught Whisper about human music and culture, giving her a new connection to her adopted world. The second pairing was an elderly human woman in a wheelchair, with a massive alien who'd been a soldier like Rith. They bickered like an old married couple within a week, but the alien carried her wherever she needed to go, and she taught him to garden, helping him find peace after years of war. More pairs followed, each one unique, each one beautiful. The program grew faster than they'd imagined. Within 3 months, they had 50 pairs. Within 6 months, over 200. Other worlds started asking about creating their own versions of Wings of Haven. But not everyone was happy about it. One evening, a ship arrived at Haven 7. It was a Draken vessel, sleek and powerful, marked with the symbols of the Remnant. The remaining Draken people, scattered after the wars, had begun trying to rebuild their civilization. 5 Draken emerged from the ship. They were smaller than Rith, but no less impressive. Their leader, a female with silver scales, asked to meet with him. Her name was Kresh. She'd been a commander during the wars, one of the few Draken leaders who'd survived. They met in a neutral space, a park near the shelter. Ji-won insisted on coming with Rith, despite his concerns for her safety. The other Draken stared at her anti-grav wheelchair with open curiosity. Rith, Kresh said, her voice formal. We've come to ask you to return to your people. The Remnant is establishing a colony on Drakkar 9. We need warriors, leaders. We need you. Rith stood tall, his wings partially spread. I'm honored, but I have responsibilities here. Kresh looked at Ji-won, then back at Rith. Responsibilities to a human? Rith, you were once called the Devourer. You led armies. You destroyed fleets. Now you play nursemaid to a crippled child? Ji-won felt the words like a slap. But before she could respond, Rith moved. He didn't attack. He simply stepped in front of Ji-won, his presence suddenly overwhelming. Choose your next words carefully, Commander, Rith said quietly. The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. That crippled child fought for my freedom when no one else would. She saw value in me when the entire galaxy called me a monster. She gave me purpose when I had nothing left to fight for. His golden eyes blazed. She is worth more than 1,000 warriors, more than 100 fleets. She is my friend, my family, and if you insult her again, colony or no colony, we will have a problem. Kresh stepped back, genuinely shocked. The other Draken murmured among themselves. This human has changed you, Kresh said finally. Yes, Rith agreed. She has, for the better. One of the other Draken, a younger male, spoke up. But don't. You miss it? The flight in formation? The songs of our people? The honor of fighting alongside our own kind? Every day, Rith said honestly. But honor isn't just about fighting. Our people believe in protecting the weak, in keeping our word, in sacrifice for those who cannot defend themselves. He gestured to Ji-won, to the shelter beyond. This is honor. This is what our ancestors taught us. I haven't abandoned our ways. I've found a new way to live them. Kresh was silent for a long moment. Then she did something unexpected. She bowed. It was a deep bow, the kind Draken only gave to those they respected greatly. Perhaps, she said, slowly, we have been too focused on rebuilding what was lost. Perhaps we should be building something new. She straightened. The colony on Drakkar 9. Would you consider being our ambassador? Not leaving this work, but bridging between your new family and your old people? Rith looked at Jiwan. She nodded encouragingly. I would be honored, Rith said, on the condition that this program expands to Drakkar 9, that we bring Wings of Haven to our people. Kresh smiled, showing all her sharp teeth. I was hoping you'd say that. 1 year after Rith's release, Wings of Haven held its first anniversary celebration. The shelter had been transformed. The cells had been converted into living spaces. The common areas were filled with humans and aliens, all helping each other, all finding purpose together. Jiwan stood on a stage, Rith beside her, Bo-Ram and Tae-Yang behind her. Hundreds of people filled the audience. Thousands more watched via holographic broadcast across a dozen worlds. A year ago, Jiwan began, I came to this shelter feeling useless. I couldn't walk. I couldn't run. I couldn't do most things that people take for granted. I thought that made me less valuable, less able to make a difference. She smiled at Rith. Then I met someone who society said was a monster, someone who'd done terrible things and didn't deserve a second chance. But I looked past what he couldn't change, and I saw who he was choosing to become. And he did the same for me. Rith stepped forward. Speaking in public still made him nervous, but his voice was strong. Jiwan taught me that strength comes in many forms, that protecting others doesn't always mean fighting, that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is be kind when the world expects cruelty. He looked out at the crowd. Every pair in this program proves the same thing. We are all stronger together. Our weaknesses balance each other's strengths. Our differences make us better, not worse. A young girl in the audience raised her hand. She was human, maybe 10 years old, sitting next to a small alien with tentacles. Mr. Rith, do you still miss being able to fight? Rith considered the question. I miss the simplicity of it, the clear purpose. But fighting was just one way to be strong. Now I've learned others. I've learned to comfort someone who's sad, to teach someone who's confused, to carry someone who cannot walk so they can see the world from the sky. He looked at the little girl. I've learned that protecting people doesn't always mean using claws and fire. Sometimes it means listening, understanding, being present when someone needs you. Is that stronger? The girl asked. Much stronger, Rith said, because anyone can destroy. But building something, creating hope, changing hearts, that takes true courage. After the ceremony, Jiwan and Rith walked through the shelter grounds. It was evening and Haven 7's purple sky was stunning. They stopped at their favorite spot, a cliff overlooking the valley below. Do you ever regret it? Jiwan asked. Giving up the chance to escape when you could have? Staying in that cell for so long? Rith spread his wings, feeling the wind ruffle his scales. No, because if I'd escaped, I never would have met you.